Welcome back, CSC 121, to part 2 of our exercise 20, our baseball text. And we're just going to finish up by doing a couple more methods in here. And again, that was an older video, and this is present, or at least it's spring 2023, at least more present than the previous video. So we're just going to continue here with a newer version that I was working on. And I just want to show you a few more things on this exercise before we finish up. Now, I'm looking at the rappel of where we left off. And it was on the white screen. This is the dark mode that I'm in now. And we had two print statements down at the bottom. Now, instead of doing that, another more efficient way to do that would be just to put another print statement right after this and put print. And in parentheses, we can put index, and we still have to put BB list index, and we have to know the index of what. So I'm going to put BB list dot index, and then in another parentheses, we're going to put I. So what that'll do is if we find ball in I, now I'm using I here, we can even use word. If we want to use word, we could do word in here. That might make more sense to us. I'll throw word in here, but make sure we update everything so we use that variable for everything. So we can use word in here. It's just using word instead of I. But now if we do that, we don't need these because we printed those out separately. And what we could do here is in the loop is just go through here and print these out. So if ball is in any of those words that are inside of BB list, it's going to print out the word and it's going to print out its index of that one, and it's going to go through the loop as it finds all of those. So let's run it, and there's all the spaces and word stuff. This is our first list that we made, and here is ball 1 and baseball 18. So there's ball here. So ball is 0, 1, so that's the one index position, and then 18, wherever that is, wherever baseball is, there it is, that's the 18th position starting at 0. So that's an easier way to do that with a little less code. Now, one thing I wanted to do here in part 2, instead of just looking for words like ball and stuff like that, one of the issues that we had here when it created this list is it actually put in periods, and there might even be commas inside here. If you look through here, you'll find some of those throughout, because when we made it a list, it got rid of spaces, but it didn't get rid of commas and periods and things like that. So we're going to try to find some of those in here. There's a period there. I'm not sure if there's any commas in here as well, but we're going to go search for those. So instead of ball, so I'm going to update this after doing this. Now we could just kind of copy this if we want and paste it, and I'll bring this out. And if I want to comment this out, I could highlight this and just do command /, or you could just put comment markers, hashtags in front of those if you want. Now, we're still going to use for word in BB list, but what we're going to look for is either a comma or a period. Now, I'll just put period here, and we can even use or. So if period in word or, and we have to put the whole thing out, so we can't just say or comma. We can't put or comma here. We have to put or comma in word, or I if you're still using I. And what's going to happen when we do that? Well, same thing. We could print out the ones that have a comma and ones that have a period, and we could even print out the index. But what we'd really want to do is get rid of them, is actually strip them out. And we can do a replace, or we can just strip them from the end since they're on the right side. There's a method of doing that. And let's just do this first and see if this works. So what we're going to do is try to find any words in here. I'll move this over, and let me cover this up so we have more room over here, and see if there's any that have commas inside there. I know there's some with periods, but let's just see what we have here. I'll run it, and we're finding force has a comma, and that's at 6, so that's over there. There's a comma there, and shortstop has a period, that's at 12, so wherever that is, there's shortstop with a period, and then the rest of these have periods. There's only one with a comma, it's just force, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ones that have these in that we may want to strip out, and we can do that. So the way to do that, now it's not really easy, because even when I did it, I tried it a couple ways, and I had to remember that strings are immutable, meaning the string itself you cannot change. You have to put it in a new list. So we're going to have to create a new list and put in our new words, because we can't just change them and have the same list. We have ways to strip out periods, but we can't strip them out in the existing list. because they're unchanging. We have to change them and put them in a new list. So this will stay the same. The list is changeable. You can change a list and have different elements in the list and add elements and take away elements and change the order, but you cannot change the text that's inside there. You can't change these strings without putting them in a new list. So that's what we're going to have to do. So what we'll do is create a new list. So I'm just going to call it bb list underscore, and I'll put NPC. You know what that stands for? No periods or commas. And I'll put equals, and I'll make an empty list, which is just 2 brackets like that. And then we're going to append to that list. So we're going to have to make a new list and put our new stuff in here. So not only are we going to get these, but we're going to have to put everything in there so that we have a full list again to look at. Now, to know how to do that, a couple things we're going to look at. I'll go over here to W3 Schools, and out of Python lists, if we go to list methods, I think the only one we're going to use here is append. So we're going to append to the list. That means add new elements to it. So we're going to use append. And if you're not sure how that works, just double check. Remember, it's a method for list. So you have to put the list name and then append and then what's going in the list. So that'll probably be I or word that's going in there if we're still working with our loop. So we're going to use that. And then also, if we go to strings, one of the ones I mentioned, now there's other ones you could try, but if I go to string methods, these are methods that are just run on strings, there is a replace, but the one that made the most sense is rstrip. Returns a right trim version of the string. Now it returns it. It doesn't change it. It returns a new one, so you could put it somewhere else, or you could print it out. You could print it out, but it can't change the original. So let's just see the way this works. And what you do for strip, you can put a number of things that you want to strip out. So you just want to put whatever it is, you're going to strip it out, and it'll look through all of those. So whether it's a comma, whether it's a period, whatever you need to put in there, it'll strip them out. So, if you're not sure, try it out. Go here and try it out. Now, let's just put like banana, comma, and a space, and whatever it had, apple or something. Apple, period. And we'll just do something like that. Now, if we put comma, period, let's just see what happens. Now, we're just printing it out. And notice it's being changed because the original text is being changed, so it's being held as a new value. So x is a new value, so it can't change the original. If we printed text out, it would still be the same. Now there it is, banana, apple. Now, it took out the period, it did not take out the comma. That's because this is one string. This is one string here, so that's why it's not doing that. It's just taking the period out because it's only trimming from the right. Because remember, this is one string, but we're going to be using multiple strings. If we wanted to take the period off of there, we could just do this. So that's what we're going to do. And one thing I just want to point out here, we're making a new value. If we print it out, txt, it's going to stay the same. That's what they mean by strings are immutable. You can't change them. So if I print out x and txt, the only way it got changed is when it's being held as a new value. So the new value doesn't have a period. The old value, txt, still has that. So you can't physically change what that is unless you reassign it or give it a new value. So I just want to point that out. So that's what we're going to do. So let me close this up. I'm not sure if that helped or not with that. But see, they took all this stuff off the end here. Actually, let me see what they did here with this thing. I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's one string here, and they're stripping off WSQ period. How did this come out? And it looks like it took off any of those characters at the end. So it took out any commas, any periods, any Q's, S's, and W's. So it wiped out all of them. So that's why there's multiple ones there. It basically took all of this stuff and wiped it out. So that's kind of the way it works. I'm still learning about it too, but it's trimming from the right. So that's what it's doing there. So it's trimming all of these, and you only have to put them in there once. And if there's multiple ones, it'll get them. So what we're going to do back here is we're going to strip out any of these characters here. So first of all, we're going to find these words and do the same thing. We could still do that. And then what we'll do here is we'll strip them out. And the way we'll strip them out is we'll do, let's look at how they do it. We're going to use the string that's going to strip it out. So the string will be in front of it. So we're going to use word dot, and we'll do R strip, it's called. And what we'll strip out is going to be a period and a comma. We'll put a period and a comma in here, and we'll put them in quotes because they're strings. So if it finds any of these, it'll trim them from the right. And how are we going to know what's happening there? Well, we could print it out. We could print these out, put print, and see if it prints them out. Fours, fours, shortstop, shortstop, outfielder, outfielder, slider, slider, rubber, rubber, red, red, game, game. So it's stripping them out. So that's the version that's getting stripped out there. So it is working, but what we want to do is we want to create a whole new list, because if we just printed out our list again, if when you're all done, if you thought, oh, well, we'll just print out BB list, print BB list. If you thought that'll just work at the end after doing all this, if you thought, oh, after all this, we'll just print out the list again, and then it won't have those commas and periods and all that stuff in there, what you'll find out is they'll still have the periods and stuff in there. So because it's printing out, remember, it's printing out this original list, and even though you can change a list, the strings themselves are immutable. So the strings won't change unless you change them here and put them in a new list. If you make the changes and put them in a new list. So that's what we'll do. We're going to print out BB list NPC. And nothing will be in that right now. But what we'll do, instead of printing these out, we don't need to print them out. What we're going to do is we're going to append. So we're going to take BB list 2, or NPC, I'm sorry, and we're going to say dot append, and what we're going to append is going to be word.rstrip. We're going to append that stuff to that new list. So we're taking this part. Instead of just printing out this word like we did here, we're going to take the list and append to the list those words. So instead of printing them, again, just to reinforce, instead of printing them like we did, instead of printing that, which is what we did, we're going to append to this list all those words as we go through the loop. So as it finds all of them, it's going to append them to the list, and then we're going to print out the new list. Now let's try it and see what happens. Now, unfortunately, it only made a list of the new words that don't have periods on them. So how do we get the full list? Well, if we have an if here, we can use an else. Basically, the else goes back here. What we're going to do for the else is just say append. We'll just use this, copy it, paste it. What are we going to append? Just word. We're not going to strip anything. We're just going to append word here. So it'll find all the ones that have a period and a comma, and it'll print them out, and it'll find the index of them, which we're doing here, and then it's going to append them to a list, and then anything else that's not in that group, but we're still going through the whole list, then it's just going to append the other ones. So these are the other ones. You just put here, the other ones, and then everything should be appended to that list. So now when you go down here, there's everything that's in there. Yankees ball. Now, I'm not sure if they're in the same order or not. Perfect game zone. It looks like it keeps it in the same order. Even though we do these first, it looks like it keeps it in the same order that it was in the list. And notice that none of these now have any periods, but it's a new list because we can't change these within the existing list. We have to make a new list, and now there's no words in there that have any periods or commas. Now, why is that helpful? Why did we do this? Let's say you needed to strip them out. We needed to put these in a database or something, or count them or whatever. For whatever reason, we're going through data here. We're doing data analysis, and we're doing that. Now, we're starting kind of in a very basic way, but we're still doing it. So that's how we're learning to do it, and we're learning to use these methods here. Now, there's other ways you could possibly do it. You could possibly have done a replace, but this didn't take a lot of code. It took a little thinking to go through here, and I even struggled at first. I was like, wait a minute, why isn't this working? Because I wasn't making a new list. I was trying to do it to the existing list, and it didn't work. So I realized I had to make a new list here because strings are immutable, and once I made a new list, it worked, and there's my new list here. So it's a different list. The strings can't be the same. You can have different elements in the list between two lists, but you can't change strings within a list. You can eliminate them and add them, but you can't change the strings themselves. They're immutable. The strings are immutable. The list can be changed. So that's kind of the way that works, and that's all we have to do with this exercise. So that's part 2. And again, all we're doing here is making a new list, and we're stripping out the commas and the periods by kind of going through there, printing them out, finding the index if you needed to find them. And the reason we're doing that, because if it's really long, it might just be easier to go through there. If this was, a couple pages of code, finding those index numbers might be a little easier to go through and find out where stuff is at. Then here we're just putting all the other ones that don't have commas or periods back in there. So that's our baseball text with a little bit of extra stuff here thrown in here at the end, hopefully to make it more relevant, to make it more than just looking for the word ball and stuff like that. Now we're actually stripping out stuff we don't want in it. We're able to strip out the spaces by splitting it, because splitting naturally takes out the spaces. There's other ways we could have got rid of spaces in there, and just like our previous exercise with the Warren County Community College, how we take out spaces, we can do that with isAlpha. But that's another way to take out spaces, to take out commas, to take out periods, or anything else that you may have in there that you don't want. So anyway, that's 20 baseball text. When you're done, just copy that and put it in your comments as a link.